I'm Dr. Emma Milne. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the history of the criminal offence of procuring a miscarriage. So the offence today sits under the 1861 Offences Against the Person Act. However, the crime of procuring a miscarriage actually dates back to 1803. That's the first time it was put into statute. Prior to that, there was case law that made procuring your own abortion illegal after quickening. So quickening is the point where the woman can feel the fetus moving inside her. It's about 15 to 17 weeks of gestation. Now, some people have said women have been criminalised under that case law. Some people say they haven't. Generally, it would appear that criminalisation only occurred in the context of women having an extramarital affair and also medical professionals performing abortions that went wrong, so resulting in the woman being harmed. However, it's really key that it was 1803 that there was the first time that procuring a miscarriage became a statutory offence. Now, if we look back to that 1803 crime, importantly, women weren't included in that. So the only people who could commit that criminal offence were third parties, people performing abortions on a woman. It wasn't women themselves. The law was a jumbled mess, it's fair to say. There was a different penalty and a different way of performing the offence if the woman's pregnancy had reached quickening or if it hadn't reached quickening. So it was quite quickly changed in 1828 and then later again in the 1830s. And then the final change that we see to the offence comes in 1861, and that's the first time that women are added to the crime. Now, we don't really know why women were added. There's no debate in Parliament on it. There's no documentation that anyone has come across that would indicate why Parliament thought at that point we should add women. However, something that's really significant about the crime of procuring a miscarriage is that the focus and the wording of the crime is very much upon preventing women from dying during abortions being performed on them. So the very first version of procuring a miscarriage, enacted in 1803, uses the language to murder or to procure the miscarriage of a woman. It's quite clear from that language that the focus here is not upon fetuses and fetal life and protecting the unborn. It's upon the fear that women die during badly performed abortions. Now, we need to keep in mind that the 1800s, all abortions were surgical abortions. All abortions took place without antibiotics because there was no such thing as antibiotics at this point. If a woman started bleeding uncontrollably because of the abortion, there was nothing anyone could do other than hope that somehow she starts clotting and she doesn't die from bleeding to death. So this was an incredibly dangerous time for women to be having certain types of abortions, particularly surgical abortions. You can understand really why Parliament thought that actually maybe we should regulate this. There's an added element to this that at the time that abortion was brought into statutory laws in 1803, it was a time for medical professionals really wanting to kind of flex their professional muscle and demonstrate that them and them alone are the people who should be regulating procedures on people's bodies, including pregnant women. So one of the drivers for the statute coming into force in 1803 from the medical bodies was to prevent midwives from being able to perform abortions as they had always done in the community. So practices like herbal remedies that would have brought on a woman's period, which she may or may not have been pregnant at that point, were all outlawed under the 1803 statute, and it was deemed that medical men are the only ones who are in the position to be able to determine whether or not an abortion should take place. They're the only ones who can do it safely. Obviously, there's lots of work that talks about whether or not that was the right approach, the fact that women were essentially removed from healthcare, that midwifery became something that was professionalised, leaving women in the community who had always done this sort of role out in the cold. So it's not as straightforward as Parliament just wanted to protect women. There's obviously large aspects of misogyny, of sense that men have control over women's bodies there. But the key thing from the history that I think is relevant to what we're talking about at the moment is that the focus was not on the fetus. This was not about saving fetal life. It was not about preventing unborn babies from dying. These laws were enacted at a time when there was actually very little interest in babies who'd been born. There was very little care for newborn babies. If a child was illegitimate, it had very few rights. There was no sense of a government-led social services that would help protect born children. In that context, are we really that convinced that they were that concerned about unborn children? I'm certainly not. So that's the history of the offence of procuring a miscarriage. It's something that I think has been lost. It's something that's been forgotten. And I think today procuring a miscarriage is understood as a crime against a fetus, which in my opinion is quite dangerous and really does need Parliament to take a look at it. But I'll start talking about that in another video.